The legendary Mortal Kombat Nitro, a lost game we've previously talked about on this channel, a mysterious relic from the early 90s long surrounded by rumours and speculation. Until now, only those directly involved in its development have ever laid eyes on it. The rest of us were left with little more than hearsay and curiosity. But after 32 years in obscurity, that changes today. This week, Mortal Kombat Nitro has finally resurfaced, and for the first time ever, we can see it in motion. Its reappearance marks a significant moment in gaming history, shedding light on a forgotten chapter of one of the industry's most iconic franchises. It's remarkable that this elusive project, once thought lost to time that has fascinated fans and historians for decades with a tantalising what if, has finally come into focus. But now that it's here, one question remains. Was it really worth the wait? Well, let's dive in and find out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. If you love obscure gaming history, subscribe. This is the return of the now legendary Mortal Kombat Nitro. In my opinion, it's always very cool to learn never before heard facts about the history of fighting games. After all, there is a reason some of the biggest franchises from the 90s remain popular, regularly receiving new entries to this day. What is just as cool is I know where to get all of the newest heavy hitters for next to nothing, and using my link you can get 65% off of Mortal Kombat 1, 64% off of Tekken 8, 74% off of Street Fighter 6, and huge money off the game's character passes. In fact, using my links you can get up to 90% off of thousands of different titles, from Marvel vs Capcom Collection to the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, so retro lovers are covered too. I hope you grab some great deals for next to nothing and enjoy the rest of this video. By 1993, Mortal Kombat had made its way to nearly every home console, but like most arcade ports of the era, each version came with compromises. With 16-bit consoles still dominant and CD-ROM add-ons and 8-bit handhelds in the mix, the game was widespread, but not always represented well. The 16-bit Sega Genesis version became a fan favourite, praised for being the most violent looking thanks to its infamous blood code. And the later Sega CD version even got an MA17 rating, giving developers more freedom. By contrast, the Super Nintendo port was a major disappointment. Despite having better graphics and sound potential, Nintendo's strict anti-violence policies led to a censored version with no blood and toned-down fatalities. Project director Jeff Peters revealed how Nintendo forced multiple changes, reduced blood to sweat, and removed certain fatality elements. He commented in the past stating Nintendo was adamant about the no violence or family-friendly part early on. So we knew as part of the Super Nintendo version we had to design the worst of the violence away. We would submit new storyboards of fatality designs to the team at Midway, Ed Boon, John Tobias and Ken Fednesner. Of those we thought still retained the intent of a fatality as well as sequences we thought Nintendo would approve. We went back and forth on a lot of designs while at the same time negotiating with Nintendo which fatalities could stay as is. Going from memory, I think we really only had to change 2 of the fatalities completely. The rest we toned down with Nintendo's oversight. We also took out all the blood from punches and kicks and instead changed it to sweat, which was mostly a palette swap on our part. Despite the censorship, SNES sales were decent, but the Genesis version outsold it, becoming a key moment in the 90s console wars. Rumours persist, however, that a more violent SNES version did exist somewhere. Acknowledging the legend of a more intense version, Rob Holmes, in an excerpt from Long Live Mortal Kombat Round 1, published on IGN, would confirm that prototypes with blood and more intense fatalities were made, but Nintendo rejected them. They hated Kano being able to pull out opponents' hearts and Johnny Cage kicking opponents so hard he could kick through their chest, sending blood, bones and their liver exploding out of their back. That all needed to be taken out. In response, James Stink, who worked on the games, pitched an upgraded Super Nintendo version, Mortal Kombat Nitro. This unreleased edition promised playable bosses, new characters like Reptile and Kung Lao, a morality system that affected costumes, multiple fatalities, and even additional features like speed adjustments, replays, and alternate stage modes. But the story goes, the game ultimately got rejected, fearing it would hurt Mortal Kombat 2 arcade sales. Still, Nitro wasn't entirely lost. Think claimed to still own one of 2 cartridges, packed with features including Kano's heart rip and a revamped Johnny Cage fatality. In fact, even Boone himself later confirmed its existence in a 2010 interview. This unfolding story of course doesn't end there though, as in 2020 more Nitro design documents resurfaced, revealing even more content, from Oscar statue fatalities to light dark stage variants. But none of us had actually seen this game in action. Well, not until now anyway. So after 32 long years, why has actual gameplay footage finally surfaced? Well, let me explain. Tabmock99, a YouTuber best known for his extensive content focused on Mortal Kombat, particularly the lore, trivia, and behind-the-scenes history of the franchise, has recently uploaded a very intriguing video to his channel. He's something of a Mortal Kombat historian and community figure, and his channel serves as a deep dive resource for fans who want to learn more about obscure characters, story arcs, and development facts from throughout the series' long history. Essentially, if you like my channel, there is a strong chance you might enjoy his, so I recommend you subscribe to his work and check it out. This time, the content creator has taken things to the next level, tracking down Fink himself, the enigmatic figure long rumoured to have worked on Mortal Kombat Nitro, and the very individual who claims to be in possession of the fabled prototype. But instead of vague stories and whispered legends, we finally get something real. Not just talk, but nearly an hour of gameplay footage, straight from the source. The mystery is no longer just speculation, it's unfolding before our very eyes. So what a time to be alive. Building upon what we already know about Mortal Kombat's tangled development history, Fink reveals that Nitro was a project he began working on shortly after the original Super Nintendo port was released, driven by a persistent game-altering bug that had been gnawing at him ever since. Like many fans at the time, he was also deeply frustrated by the ludicrous censorship of the game's iconic blood and violence. According to Fink, the final product simply didn't live up to his vision, and Ed Boon wasn't a fan of it either. The idea behind Nitro was to seize the brief window between Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, and use it to deliver a definitive version of the first game. This enhanced build would feature 2 fatalities per character, alternate costumes, and even branching single-player endings shaped by the player's decisions. A bold ambition for its time, but as fate would have it, the development of Mortal Kombat 2 progressed far more rapidly than expected, leaving Nitro abandoned before it ever saw the light of day. Still, during its brief time in development, the goal was clear: to refine and elevate the original Super Nintendo version, to fix its infamous walking underwater physics, boost the speed, and, reading between the lines, deliver an experience more in line with Street Fighter II Turbo Hyper Fighting than the sluggish, sanitized port fans had been given. As for the prototype Fink still holds, there's a bittersweet twist. None of the branching story elements are included in this particular build, but perhaps most tantalizing of all is the revelation that this isn't the only ROM that has ever existed. While the current version may be the first, Fink claims a second ROM was produced, one that potentially included further enhancements. Tragically though, it was never burned to a chip, and was ultimately lost forever when the plug got pulled on the project. This means a lost chapter of Mortal Kombat history was tantalizingly close and just out of reach, but at least we're finally able to learn more about Nitro's development, purpose, and catch a glimpse of its very first form in action. Fink warns that when seeing Nitro for the first time, it's important to keep expectations in check. After all, this is still just a prototype, and predictably, it's riddled with problems. The game crashes often, bizarre throw loops occur where each toss sends characters floating higher and higher into the air, and if you launch them too far, well, you'll just have to sit patiently and wait for a timer to run out so you can claim your victory. Push on to the 3rd or 4th round, and even if you manage to beat your opponent, the game generously rewards you with a draw. It's full of rough edges, quirks and glitches that clearly still needed ironing out. That said, there was one notable success. The game actually runs at the speed the original Super Nintendo version was meant to. According to Fink, the sluggish pace of the original release was the result of a critical section of code being accidentally cut during translation. But in true Acclaim fashion, rather than fix it, they simply shoved it out of the door anyway, content that it was at least vaguely functional. After all, when has a technical oversight ever stood in the way of a quick buck and a flashy marketing campaign when it comes to that shameless brand? Delivering the best possible experience for paying customers never once seemed the priority for them. What's particularly interesting though is that the missing code responsible for slowing the gameplay down wasn't just some random oversight. It was actually the direct result of Nintendo's own heavy-handed interference. Their notoriously strict content policy at the time meant the original port wouldn't be approved unless those conditions they asked for were met. Most infamously, Kano's heart-ripping fatality. and in the scramble to sanitize the game to meet Nintendo's demands, essential chunks of code were rejigged in the process, with unintended consequences. So it seems that once again, the men in suits from multiple corporate corners couldn't help but meddle, and these interferences ultimately ensured that players were never given the best version of the game that could have been, making this story make even more sense with regards to why Fink was passionate about making Nitro. In Tabmock's fantastic upload, Fink also unveils the top secret Nitro development file, the very same one he'd previously teased snippets of on social media. This fascinating document includes pictures for new hidden characters, fresh moves and fatalities, detailed character breakdowns, ideas for new costumes, clever space-saving techniques, and much more. If you want to dive deeper into these behind-the-scenes details, be sure to check out Tabmock's video, as it's an absolute treasure trove. As for the gameplay, it's essentially just as Fink describes it. But there are some other cool quirks, such as a menu screen featuring an exhibition mode, something that does not exist in the original Mortal Kombat Super Nintendo game, but sadly it essentially just plays the same as tournament mode. Throughout the gameplay's footage, we're treated to a parade of glitches and bizarre bugs, just as Fink warned us of. For instance, every time Scorpion throws his iconic spear, the game locks up entirely, bringing matches to an abrupt halt. Meanwhile, Sonya can hilariously trigger fatalities at any point mid-fight, turning ordinary rounds into chaotic spectacles. But perhaps most exciting of all is the chance to witness some of the long-lost legendary fatalities that never made it into the official Super Nintendo release. At last, we get to see Kano ripping hearts from chests, and that jaw-dropping fatality teased earlier, where Johnny Cage drives his foot straight through his opponent's torso, sending guts flying in every direction. These are the very features that were stripped out during development, and in doing so inadvertently broke the original Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo's performance, causing the slowdown issue. Naturally, with close to an hour of gameplay footage available, I'm only scratching the surface of what's on display here. So if you're eager to see all of the chaos, quirks, and curiosities unfold for yourself, I encourage you once again to check out Tabmock's full upload. It's well worth a watch. Speaking of this content creator, he also urges Fink to one day consider dumping the ROM online, not just for the sake of preserving gaming history, but so enthusiasts and historians alike can finally experience it firsthand. It even opens the door for dedicated hobbyists to potentially finish what was started all of those years ago, and perhaps at long last bring Fink's true vision of Mortal Kombat Nitro to life. Regarding this fascinating tower, what makes it so special isn't just the existence of the prototype itself, it's the story behind it. A lost chapter of Mortal Kombat history buried by corporate interference, technical mishaps, and the chaos of rushed development cycles. The fact that the game is riddled with bugs and barely holds itself together doesn't diminish its value. If anything, it makes it all the more intriguing. It offers a raw, unpolished glimpse into what could have been, and serves as a reminder of the messy, human side of game development that often gets hidden behind glossy marketing campaigns. And perhaps most remarkable of all, after 32 long years of rumours, speculation and whispers, we finally get to see Mortal Kombat Nitro with our own eyes. Not just as a footnote in forgotten development files, but as a playable, tangible piece of gaming history brought back from the brink of obscurity. Don't forget to check out Tabmock's full video on all of this, and if you want to support what I do and get some dirt cheap games simultaneously, you can use my links to get 65% off of Mortal Kombat 1, 64% off Tekken 8, 74% off Street Fighter 6, and huge money off the game's character passes. There is a cornucopia of classics on offer, from the Marvel vs. Capcom collection to the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary collection, so retro lovers can snag great deals too. I hope you grab some bargains for next to nothing and have a lot of fun. Anyway, cheerio!